All right, today we're diving into something fascinating, the stories that weren't written down. We're going to dig into these incredible folk, tribal, and oral traditions that honestly form the deep, deep cultural roots of the Indian subcontinent.
So let me start by asking you a question. When you think of history, what comes to mind? Probably ancient books, right? Dusty old scrolls. But what if the most important histories, the really vital stuff, were never written down at all? What if they were lived, sung, and passed down person to person, generation after generation?
You see, in ancient India, you kind of had these two powerful streams of knowledge flowing at the same time. On one hand, you've got the written stuff, meticulously preserved texts like the Vedas. But on the other, you have this spoken history, a living history. It wasn't passed down on paper, but woven right into the fabric of daily life through songs, stories, and rituals. It was so much more flexible and adaptive, really centered around the community.
Okay, so here's a great way to picture this, and it actually comes straight from the source material. Imagine Indian culture is this huge ancient tree. The written texts, yeah, those are like the big, obvious branches you can see. But the folk and tribal traditions, oh, they're the roots, the deep, powerful roots that hold the whole thing up and give it life. So if we're gonna understand these roots properly, we first have to tackle some old, kind of problematic ideas. Because for a really long time, there was a huge misunderstanding about tribal communities. So back in the 19th century, you had these scholars, often coming from a colonial point of view, and they'd look at cultures that didn't have written texts and just make a judgment. They slapped labels on them like primitive or inferior compared to so-called civilized people. And, well, this was not just biased, it was flat out wrong, as we're about to see.
But was there any truth to that at all? Nope, not even close. Modern scholarship and just, actually looking at the facts tells a completely different story. So let's dig in.
And this quote right here, it just nails the shift in thinking. The moment scholars started doing real, respectful research, they discovered that these cultures were incredibly rich, incredibly complex. And those old, biased ideas, yeah, they pretty much got tossed out the window, as they should have been.
And listen, we are not talking about some small fringe group here. We're talking about communities like the Munda, the Santal, the Bil, many living in places like the Chota Nagpur Plateau. And get this, 104 million people. Just let that sink in. That is more than the population of a lot of major countries. It just goes to show how central these communities are to the entire story of India. So, what exactly makes these cultures so rich and complex? Well, a big part of it is their worldview. Let's explore that because it shows this incredible, deep connection between the divine, nature, and people.
Okay, look at this. This is a fundamentally different way of seeing the world. In a lot of these tribal traditions, nature isn't just a thing to be used. No, it's alive. It has consciousness. Mountains, rivers, plants, animals, they're all sacred. And it makes sense that their rituals would be deeply tied to the seasons of agriculture, planting, harvesting, all of it. And here's a perfect example of what I'm talking about. The Tata tribals in the Nilgiri Hills. For them, the mountain peaks you see right there, those are literally the homes of their gods. That's not just a cool story. It shapes their entire relationship with the world around them. And it's not just about nature spirits. A lot of tribes have this incredibly developed cosmology. Basically, their whole understanding of how the universe works. And often, there's a supreme creator god at the center of it all. For the Munda and Santhal people, it's Singbonga. Over in Arunachal Pradesh, it's Doni Polo, who is this amazing combination of the sun and the moon. I mean, these are really sophisticated, complex ideas.
Now, this is super important. None of these traditions existed in a bubble. Absolutely not. There was this constant back and forth exchange with other belief systems, especially the Vedic traditions.
And the key thing to get here is that this was not a one-way street. It wasn't some big culture swallowing up smaller ones. It was a genuine exchange, a real dialogue. You know, there's a term for this. It's called syncretism. It's this blending of beliefs that creates something totally new and unique, as gods, stories, and rituals just flowed freely between them. Want some mind-blowing examples of this? Think about the influence going from tribal traditions out into the mainstream. The famous god Jagannath, who was worshipped by millions at that massive temple in Puri, his origins are tribal. The same goes for so many of the powerful mother goddess figures. We're talking about fundamental parts of wider Indian spirituality that came directly from tribal roots. And of course, it was a two-way street. The influence definitely went the other direction too. A lot of tribal communities brought Hindu gods into their own traditions. And what I think is so cool is that they didn't just copy the big epics like the Ramayana. No way. They created their own versions, like the Beel Ramayana, that fit their own world, their own values. It's incredible. You know, the sociologist Andre Bataille just sums this all up perfectly. He pointed out that, sure, tribal religions were influenced by Hinduism, but the reverse is every bit as true. Hinduism has been shaped and enriched by tribal religions all throughout its history. It's a story of mutual influence, not domination. Okay, so what's the big takeaway from all this? Why does it matter today? Let's bring it all home and see why these ancient roots are so crucial for understanding the world we live in right now. Here's the most important thing to remember. This is an ancient history. It's not dead and gone. These traditions, these stories, these ways of seeing the world, they're not dusty relics in a museum. They are alive. They are vibrant. They are happening right now. And let's go back to our tree metaphor one last time. These traditions are the living roots of that giant cultural tree. They are still feeding it, still shaping the lives of millions, and are a huge reason for the incredible diversity you see across the subcontinent today. And that brings me to one last question, but this one is for you. Just for a second, think about your own life, your own family. Are there any stories or songs or maybe even family recipes that you know by heart, but that have never ever been written down? They were just passed from your grandparents to your parents to you. See, that's oral tradition right there. It's a powerful reminder that some of the most important history isn't written in a book, it's lived.